Hi everyone, my name is Fabiola Morero, and I'm going to be analyzing a chapter from the book The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. The chapter I will be covering is called VELOCIRAPTORS. So to give you a little background on the chapter, for those of you that haven't read it, the chapter begins by referring to the Jurassic Park movies and novel. This happens a lot throughout the chapter because not only was that the time where velociraptors began to be a dinosaur that people recognized, but they were also one of the most popular ways for people to see a picture of how dinosaurs lived during their time. As the chapter continues, it compares how the different velociraptors in Jurassic Park look from actual velociraptors. The movies weren't as accurate as people believed them to be, but because they were so popular and entertaining, no one questioned the movies. The text then briefly explains how the mind mainly believes what it sees rather than what it knows, and relates back to the chapter. So, the table of contents. Now that you've gotten a breakdown of the chapter, here are the main things I'm going to talk about. The main idea of the text. So, basically, the central focus of what the chapter as a whole. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the past regarding the text. So, pretty much, what is the purpose of the author reviewing this topic? And lastly, the devices the author uses to get his point across. Alright, so let's begin with the main idea. There isn't just one set main idea in the text. The one main idea would just be velociraptors in general, but I'm not going to just sit here and talk about velociraptors. So I'm going to go through the main idea of each section in the passage. So in the first section of the passage, it describes how velociraptors in the movies are different from actual velociraptors. The movie portrays velociraptors as scaly creatures from present-day Montana that are 6 feet in height and not just vicious but also terrifyingly intelligent. But velociraptors were actually feathered creatures, about the size of a turkey that weighed less than 35 pounds, with a 3 feet long tail. They were also mainly scavengers, but they weren't as smart as the movies portrayed. The movies said that they were smarter than dolphins and primates, but they were probably closer to chicken and possums. But they were still smarter than the average dinosaur. So why did Jurassic Park velociraptors look different? Because the creator of the Jurassic Park world based his velociraptors on a different dinosaur. The dinosaur was called Deinonychus. This dinosaur was exactly like the dinosaur they call Velociraptor in the movies. He chose to name the velociraptors because it sounded more dramatic and memorable. This is the same reason why he called the novels Jurassic Park, even though most of the dinosaurs were not alive during the Jurassic Age. The last point the author makes in the chapter is that our minds believe what we see before they believe what we know. For example, even though I've spent the last couple of minutes explaining how velociraptors were actually feathered scavengers about the size of a swan, you can't help but picture the raptors from Jurassic Park in your mind. Different quotes from the text are that knowing the fact doesn't help picture the truth. Nothing is as deceptive as a photograph, meaning images are unreliable, but we can't help but believe them. So the next part is the purpose of the chapter, and it's actually very simple. The whole point of the chapter is to give a brief history of dinosaurs in order to have backup for the author's review of them. Finally, the last thing we're going to talk about is the devices the author uses in this chapter. The author uses different rhetorical devices throughout the passage. Throughout the passage, the author purposely boldens the word Jurassic Park, Tyrannosaurus rex, and Velociraptor mongoliensis. We can infer that he chose to bold these words to accentuate them in order to push the audience's attention to the Jurassic Park novels, which is why he also put the names of some of the dinosaurs in bold. Another device used was allusions to Jurassic Park. Using these allusions, it gives the audience background and understanding of the author's claim. The author also used an inductive method of organizing this chapter. An inductive method is when information is ordered by complexity. So facts are placed before conclusions and recommendations. It is exactly how the chapter is organized. The author first gives an example of how our brains believe what we see over what we know, and then he introduces that this is the whole point of the chapter. Another strategy that the chapter uses are historical references. Throughout the chapter, numerous dates and important events related to dinosaurs are mentioned. The author uses these to compare what we used to know about dinosaurs to what we now know. He used it to help give the readers a sense of how much things changed and what we know now might change in the future. Finally, the author uses his personal experience to really emphasize how terrifying Jurassic Park dinosaurs really were. It makes the reader relate to him and prove that he's just exaggerating how intensely scary the raptors are. He mentions that in the movies, velociraptors figure out how to open a door, and the first time he remembers hearing his brother, Hank, he curses a name as they were watching the movie. When velociraptors turned the door handle, he heard his 10-year-old brother mutter, "Oh." Now, the last thing I'm going to be talking about is the overall rating of the chapter. John Green gave the chapter an overall rating of 3 stars, but personally, I would give the Velociraptors a 4-star rating instead. I believe he gave this chapter a 3 because he wasn't the biggest fan of how deceiving Velociraptors really are. But I personally think it's really interesting how we know how they really looked, but we still can't help but picture the ones from Jurassic Park. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.